If you've been waking up with stiff, aching joints and wondering why it seems to be getting worse instead of better, you're not alone. I'm Dr. Brian, and welcome to Channel Wellness Blueprint Over 50. I've spent more than 30 years helping people reclaim their health and independence, and I've seen how one tiny change can make the difference between struggling through the day and actually enjoying it. But here's the part most people don't know. There's a common ingredient hiding in many everyday foods, something most of us eat without thinking twice, that might be quietly fueling your joint pain. What if I told you this same ingredient could be speeding up joint damage and making inflammation roar inside your body? Stay with me, because by the end of today's story, you'll understand the science, the solutions, and the hope that comes with taking control of your health. I want you to picture a small fire burning inside a fireplace. That fire represents normal inflammation. It's your body's way of repairing, protecting, healing. Now imagine someone comes along and tosses dry kindling on that fire again and again until the flames leap out of the fireplace and start licking at the walls. That's what sugar can do inside your body, especially to your joints. I first noticed this connection years ago when I met Helen, a retired teacher who loved baking cookies for her grandchildren. She came to my clinic complaining of stiff, swollen fingers and knees that felt like they belonged to someone 20 years older. She thought it was simply aging, but as we talked about her diet, I realized her daily habit of just a little sweetness might be playing a bigger role than she ever imagined. When we eat a lot of sugary foods, cakes, sodas, sweetened cereals, our body releases chemicals called cytokines. Think of cytokines as little messengers. Some tell the body to heal, others tell it to fight. But when sugar floods the system, these messengers multiply, sounding the alarm over and over until the immune system goes into overdrive. It's like calling the fire department to put out a candle flame. The response is bigger than the original problem, and the extra chaos damages nearby tissue, in this case, the cartilage and lining of your joints. There's also something called glycation. Now that's a big word, but picture it like this. Sugar molecules stick to proteins in your blood the way caramel sticks to a pan. This sticky mess forms what scientists call advanced glycation end products, or AGEs for short. And just like caramelized sugar hardens and cracks, AGEs stiffen your tissues and make them more vulnerable to wear and tear. A study in the journal Arthritis Research and Therapy even found that higher levels of these AGEs were linked to more severe joint damage in people with osteoarthritis. And there's more. Excess sugar doesn't just affect the joints directly, it also stirs up trouble in the gut. A healthy gut is like a well-tended garden full of good bacteria, keeping things in balance. Too much sugar and weeds start taking over, weakening the gut's protective wall. Scientists call this leaky gut, where harmful substances slip through tiny cracks into the bloodstream. Your immune system sees these invaders and attacks, adding even more fuel to the inflammation fire. That's why when Helen cut back on sugar, trading sweet tea for water with lemon, cookies for a small piece of dark chocolate, she didn't just lose a few pounds. Within weeks, she told me her hands felt looser, her knees less angry. Was it magic? No. It was her body finally getting a break from the constant chemical alarms sugar had been setting off. So if you've been living with daily joint stiffness, know this. Reducing sugar doesn't just protect your waistline. It can calm the storm inside your body, letting your joints breathe again. And that's the first step toward real arthritis pain relief, the kind that comes not from a pill bottle, but from what's on your plate. Not long after Helen's visit, I met Walter, a former construction worker with hands as strong as oak. At least they used to be. He told me with quiet frustration that even holding a coffee cup now felt like gripping it through shards of glass. When we looked at his blood tests and diet together, one culprit kept showing up. Sugar. Not just in desserts, but in everyday foods he thought were harmless. White bread, flavored yogurt, even his so-called energy drinks. Here's what I explained to Walter and what I want to share with you. Inside every cell in your body, there's a tiny power station called the mitochondria. These little engines burn fuel to keep your heart pumping, your muscles moving, and yes, your joints repairing themselves. But when sugar levels stay too high for too long, it's like pouring cheap gasoline into those engines. The burn becomes dirty, releasing tiny sparks called free radicals. A few sparks are normal. Your body has built-in firefighters, antioxidants, that put them out. But too much sugar, too often, overwhelms the firefighters. The sparks grow into wildfires. This imbalance is what doctors call oxidative stress. Oxidative stress doesn't just tire out your cells. It scars them. It nicks the DNA, stiffens the proteins, and roughens the cartilage that should be smooth as ice. Imagine the hinges on a well-oiled door, slowly turning rusty. That's what happens inside your joints when oxidative stress takes over. Studies in journals like Free Radical Biology and Medicine have linked this oxidative damage directly to worsening arthritis, showing how it accelerates the wear and tear of joint tissue. But sugar doesn't stop there. Remember those sticky ages we talked about earlier? They add to oxidative stress too, like glue clogging the gears of a clock. As they pile up, the body senses trouble and sends in the immune system once again. More inflammation, more joint damage, more pain. It becomes a vicious cycle. Sugar feeding the flames, oxidative stress pouring on the gasoline. When I explained this to Walter, he shook his head. "So my lunch sandwich and sweet tea are part of this mess?" he asked. "Yes," I told him, "because even foods that don't taste all that sweet can break down into sugar in the bloodstream, keeping those mitochondria engines sputtering and smoking." The good news, and this is where hope shines through, is that cutting back on sugar and adding foods rich in antioxidants can help quiet this storm. Colorful berries, leafy greens, nuts, seeds, even a sprinkle of turmeric in your soup. These are like sending in reinforcements to the exhausted firefighters inside your body. They help mop up the free radicals, protect the mitochondria, and give your joints a chance to heal instead of hurt. Walter took that advice seriously. He swapped his sweet tea for green tea, started eating blueberries instead of muffins, and within a couple of months, he told me something remarkable. "Doc, I can open jars again without wincing." It wasn't overnight, but slowly, as the oxidative stress eased, his body found its rhythm of repair again. And that's why if you're living with aching joints, tired muscles, and fatigue that doesn't make sense, it might be worth looking not just at how much sugar you eat, but how often you give your body the tools to fight back. Because the real story of joint pain relief often begins long before we reach for medicine. It starts with quieting the fires we can't see but definitely feel. There's another part of this story that many people overlook, and it's one I've seen play out in countless lives, including that of a gentleman named Frank. Frank was 62 when he came to see me, a retired bus driver who loved Sunday pancakes and sweetened coffee. He also carried an extra 40 pounds on his frame, weight that seemed to have crept up over the years like ivy climbing a wall. "Doc," he said, "my knees just don't want to carry me anymore." And when I watched him walk down the hallway, I could see how each step seemed heavier than it should be. What Frank didn't realize, and what many people don't, is how deeply sugar and weight gain are tied together, and how that extra weight becomes a silent partner in worsening joint pain. See, sugary foods and drinks are like guests at a party who show up empty-handed. They bring calories, plenty of them, but no real nutrition. They slip into the bloodstream fast, spiking blood sugar, giving a rush of energy, then leaving just as quickly, making you crave more. It's a roller coaster that keeps the body asking for the next ride, the next snack, the next cookie. Now here's the tricky part. As those sugary calories pile up, the body stores the extra as fat, often around the belly. This isn't just any fat, it's what doctors call visceral fat, the kind that wraps around your organs deep inside. And this fat doesn't just sit there quietly. It acts like a chemical factory, pumping out inflammatory substances day and night. Imagine tiny loudspeakers hidden in your body, constantly shouting messages of inflammation that travel through your bloodstream, reaching your joints and making pain worse. That's what visceral fat does, and sugar helps build it. Frank told me he thought joint pain came only from worn-out cartilage or old age. But when we talked about how every extra pound adds several pounds of pressure on weight-bearing joints like the knees and hips, his eyes widened. It's true, research shows that even losing 10 pounds can mean 30 to 40 pounds less force on your knees with every step. No wonder his joints felt like they were carrying bricks. But here's the hopeful part. When Frank cut back on sugary drinks and desserts, focusing instead on whole foods, lean proteins, vegetables, whole grains, His weight began to shift. Slowly, the numbers on the scale went down. But more importantly, so did the swelling in his knees. He told me one day with a grin, "Doc, I walked to the park with my granddaughter, and I didn't have to sit down halfway." That was victory, not just in pounds lost, but in freedom gained. And science backs this up. A study in arthritis and rheumatology found that weight loss in people with knee osteoarthritis didn't just reduce pain, it actually slowed down joint damage seen on x-rays. Less weight meant less pressure, less inflammation, less progression of the disease itself. So when we talk about sugar, it's not only about what it does inside the blood or the cells. It's also about what it adds to your frame and how that extra load squeezes the life out of joints that were never meant to carry so much. Cutting back on sugar becomes not just a diet change, but a way to give your knees, hips, and back a chance to move freely again. And for people like Frank, and maybe for you, that can be the first real step toward joint pain relief that lasts. There's one more piece of this puzzle, and it often hides in plain sight. I remember a patient named Marjorie, a 70-year-old grandmother who loved her morning pastries and afternoon sweet tea. She told me her knees felt like they were on fire some days, and other days the pain would ease just enough to give her hope, only to roar back worse than before. When we looked at her blood work, one thing jumped off the page. Her blood sugar was spiking like a roller coaster, and those highs and lows were echoing in her joints. Here's why that matters. Every time you eat or drink something loaded with sugar or refined carbs, white bread, cookies, sweet drinks, your body scrambles to pull that sugar out of the bloodstream by releasing insulin. At first, insulin does its job well, like a key unlocking doors so sugar can move into cells for energy. But over time, when sugar floods the system too often, those doors start resisting the key. Scientists call this insulin resistance. And when that happens, sugar lingers in the blood longer than it should, triggering inflammation, like sparks hitting dry grass. But the story doesn't stop there. High blood sugar doesn't just feed inflammation, it can actually change the way nerves sense pain. Studies in journals like Diabetes Care have shown that people with frequent blood sugar spikes often experience heightened pain sensitivity. It's as if the volume knob on pain nerves gets turned up, making every joint twinge feel louder, sharper, harder to ignore. That's why Marjorie's pain seemed to flare after certain meals. Her blood sugar wasn't just feeding inflammation, it was making her joints feel every bit of it more intensely. When I explained this to her, she frowned. "So my afternoon sweet tea is making my knees yell louder?" Exactly. Because when blood sugar rises fast, then crashes, it doesn't just leave you tired and hungry. It whipsaws the whole system, from hormones to inflammation signals to pain nerves. The body likes steady rhythms, not roller coasters. The encouraging news is that this can change. When Marjorie started swapping her pastries for oatmeal with berries, her sweet tea for water with lemon, and added a little protein like eggs or Greek yogurt at breakfast, something remarkable happened. Her blood sugar began to level out. No more wild spikes, no more deep crashes. Over the next few months, she told me her joints felt calmer, like the volume knob on her pain had finally been turned down. And that's the power of keeping blood sugar steady. By choosing slow-digesting foods, whole grains, vegetables, lean proteins, and pairing carbs with protein or healthy fats, you give your body a steady trickle of energy instead of a flood. That means less inflammation, less pain sensitivity, and a better chance for your joints to heal instead of hurt. So if you've ever wondered why some days your arthritis pain feels like a whisper and others like a shout, it might be worth looking at what's on your plate. Because every bite you take either keeps your blood sugar calm or sends it on a roller coaster. And your joints feel the ride every single time. So here's what I want you to remember. What you put on your plate can either stir up pain or bring your body a little more peace. I've seen it in Helen's hands, in Walter's grip, in Frank's knees, in Marjorie's daily walks. Cutting back on sugar isn't about giving up sweetness in life. It's about letting your body heal, about turning down the fire so your joints can finally breathe again. If you're living with arthritis pain, know this: change is possible at any age. You can start today, one small choice at a time. I'm Dr. Brian, and this is Wellness Blueprint Over 50. If this message spoke to you, share your story in the comments Subscribe for more hope-filled health guidance. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Together, we can reclaim your health, your independence, and your joy.